Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on how to promote your open data launch. This is an interactive webinar, and we want your questions, so please feel free to send them in using the GoToWebinar feature at any point during this presentation, and I will pass them on as soon as it's convenient. Our presenter today is Lisa O'Neill, Senior Marketing Communications Manager for Socrata. So to start off, Lisa, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started here at Socrata.
All right, well, great. Thanks, Jessica, and thanks for having me, and thank you to everyone who's joined our webinar today. I come to Socrata as actually a former Socrata customer. I worked in public service as the Director of Digital Communications for the Governor of New York State, Governor Cuomo, and I also worked for the Department of Energy and their public affairs digital shop. And before that, I also worked in news at ABC News and New York Daily News. So I have about over 10 years of strategic communications, mostly rooted in digital, but led the launch of data.ny.gov at New York State. And at Socrata, I work very closely with our customers to help give them ideas about launches, as well as help them with anything from press releases to messaging and talking points to media event strategy. So I'm really just here as a support for all of our customers to help them get the great recognition they deserve for their open data efforts.
So you've seen a lot of project launches go from start to finish.
Yes, you know, during my work at New York State, definitely saw a lot of sites, and you know, in addition to data.ny.gov, but at Socrata, I've been lucky enough to help a lot of our customers from Cincinnati to Detroit to Montgomery County help with live launch events and help them be a success.
And just before we get started, we're going to cover options for all different sizes of organizations. So, you know, if you've got a small budget, large budget, no matter how many resources you have, there'll probably be a little something in here for you.
Absolutely. I would say in government, you know, we definitely try to spend as few resources as possible, or sort of do as much as you can with your limited resources.
Great. So let's get on to the first question then. So tell us, why is it important to make the effort, the time and effort to plan your launch process?
Yeah, that's a great question. In general, you know, getting out there and being able to craft your story and tell your story and talk about all that you've done in open data is great to be able to shape that narrative rather than having others react and really control that narrative. So, you know, just no matter how comfortable or how ready you feel, I think going out and having a baseline and really saying this is an open data journey and we're embarking on this, and it's a transparent effort which really includes engagement, and you're really saying, you know, we're starting this and we're going to get to a better place. And so, you know, I think that getting it out there and crafting it is better than just letting others take over the message. In addition, you know, it really gets the news out and engages external stakeholders that really will contribute to the success of your open data portal, whether it's everyday citizens or journalists, community leaders, different stakeholders, developers, researchers, getting the data out there. And the more they know about it, the more they're using it, and the more value you're seeing from your open data portal. In addition, you know, it informs internal stakeholders. If you have a strong launch and you promote it, then internally people are aware of your site. And a lot of times, in a lot of cases, we've seen the largest amount of use actually is internally. That, you know, open data platforms and the Socrata platform can really be much more user-friendly than a lot of the applications and software that a lot of internal government stakeholders are used to. So really getting that out, I mean, a lot of internal government staffers are surprised at how easily they can access information. And so just making them aware of that is really important. In addition, as I sort of mentioned earlier, communicating the entire open data journey. You know, you're not going to be New York City or Chicago necessarily from the second that you launch. and really making that, communicating that to your constituents, to stakeholders, and talk about how this is a work in progress is really important to help mediate any potential criticism you may have as well. Really just being open and transparent about how this is a work in progress. In addition, there's a lot of community activists, good government groups that have been very active in trying to get this data open and available to the public, and I think it's really important, in addition, to recognize their efforts in helping that movement come about, and also, they appreciate that recognition as being part of this movement towards open data.
Yeah, one of the things we hear a lot in webinars from our customers is getting their new data portal into the internal workflow. And so doing a launch process this early sounds like it can be a really good tool to kind of get people used to what's available and what they can actually use in their day-to-day.
Exactly. I think if you can really communicate how easy it is, and sort of, if you include screen grabs, and we'll talk more about sort of those media elements, but the more people internally know that it's there and know that it's a resource for them to find out information that they didn't previously have access to is really important. And that, can be tackled as easily by just doing an internal email, but as well as getting press. Government staffers are much more aware of it as a tool or resource.
Great. So moving on to our next question then. Oh, so give us some tips on how to talk about your open data launch.
So in general, there are I'm just going to go over some general messaging talking points and how you can really shape that message, and some things that I've already talked about. It's an important milestone on the path towards data-driven government. In addition, unlocking data allows for it to be tapped as a natural resource. A lot of times we talk about how data, leveraging the power of data, it's a resource that governments have in abundance, and by tapping that, they can really affect and optimize outcomes in quality of life, operational excellence, and economic impact. We've really found that these three value drivers really express the value of this idea of data as a utility. And so these are a lot of the things that we talk about when we talk about how beneficial unlocking data and breaking down silos is. In addition, it's a new tool for everyday citizens as well as government staffers. That's another thing I've sort of talked about. We talk about democratizing access to data. Instead of having a really complicated, robust legacy system that you may need to be trained on for weeks or months to understand, these new open data tools such as Socrata really allow for everyday citizens and government staffers. You don't have to be an engineer, you don't have to be a coder. It's really for anyone to go look at, and that user-friendly interface is also something citizens expect their governments to be providing for them these days with technologies by Apple, Amazon, and others out there. That's the sort of digital experience that our digital society expects today. And so they also expect that from their government to have really user-friendly interfaces. One of the ways that you can really draw insights from this data is via on the Socrata platform, the ability, charts, graphs, and maps all make that data more accessible and easier to draw insights. In addition, you can drill down on a budget app, for instance. You can drill down to the line item and really be able to explore things in a way that looking at a normal spreadsheet or, a lot of governments that still publish their budgets in PDFs, it's really difficult to get down to that level of detail. And finally, a message that really resonates is, it's the citizens' taxpayer dollars, and they really want to know where those are going. And it's their data, it's their money, and it should be open to the public.
Great. You mentioned charts and graphs and maps, and really I think visualizations are very important right now, and kind of where a lot of this data-driven stuff is moving.
Exactly. You know, we talk about both data access and insight, and the idea is things like visualizations make it much easier to glean insights from the data. And with the Socrata platform, it's really easy to create charts and different types of graphs, as well as make maps, whether it's a point map or a heat map. And you know, we've seen with many of our customers, again, with a successful launch, and if you have a lot of citizens engaging with a site, they can create their own views, they can, you know, create their own maps and save those. And so you really see a variety of ways that people are engaging with your site and how they also find those tools very useful, and it's easy for an everyday citizen to do.
Excellent. Moving on to the next slide here, we have some examples of launch media.
Absolutely. So, you know, in preparation for your launch, there's a lot of tools that definitely emphasize the visualization aspect of Socrata software, I would say, and open data sites and tools. As Jessica talked about, the importance, you know, so as you're prepping a sort of press launch media kit, or even thinking about, you know, before, for all your social media, for blog posts, you should really identify some visuals that will be compelling and, you know, be easy for reporters to embed in stories, or for, you know, people to pick up on and continue to promote on social media. So that includes, you know, certain views and screen grabs of different interesting heat maps. You know, in Baton Rouge, it may be a heat map of crime reports in the city. In addition, in Detroit, they, you know, made a map of blight remediation efforts. So really thinking about what might be interesting to both journalists and everyday citizens, and really creating, you know, getting that media out. In addition, you know, the city of Los Angeles created a little YouTube video with the mayor, and he's just sort of exploring the site. And so that's the screen grab of Mayor Garcetti in the corner there. And then we also had for the state of Utah, you know, they had a sort of a screen graph that they had also given out to media with their press release. And so whether it's just a small sort of demo video or screen grabs or other media, those can really help the interest by both journalists and citizens.
Great. So taking a look at our next slide here, what are some examples of promotion ideas for strange resources?
So I would say that most governments I work with, there are strange resources, and I would say, you know, also speaking from my experience, I did, you know, in the governor's office, I didn't have a huge budget to go out and shoot video or, you know, design a report or anything around launches. And so these are some real sort of base level things that you can do to help promotion and traffic and media attention for your site. You know, one thing is really thinking about where you can put a link to the new site where you already get a lot of traffic. That's oftentimes your government or organization's home site, a homepage rather, or there may be certain agency sites that get a lot of traffic. In New York State, the lottery site, you know, which isn't a huge surprise, got a ton of traffic, and so be able to, you know, putting a link to the open data portal in highly trafficked areas will help promote it, and it's just a really easy thing to do with sort of a banner ad or even a sale link, things like that. Again, you know, social media, that doesn't cost that much, and that's something I work with customers in terms of maybe having a hashtag for your event. So if it's, you know, Kenya just recently launched and had a really robust Kenya open data hashtag that was very, you know, they got a lot of attention on social media. And again, you know, using visuals and or specific data points, you know, there are X number of demolitions in Detroit weekly, or the type of things that may be interesting, just figuring out 2 or 3 that you can continue to promote your site on social media, just picking, or even how much your budget is, things of that nature. A couple of data points can be really helpful. In addition, something you can do, QuickTime allows you to do screen grabs of your site where, you just time and record your site as you're dragging your mouse around, and you can sort of explore things and do a voiceover, and that's a pretty low-cost option, if you have an intern in-house who's into something like that, or even a press staffer or something like that. In addition, sending a press release, if you don't want to put it on the wire, just looking into a couple reporters, tech reporters, local reporters, and just putting together a press release and sending it out to them, in addition to radio stations and television stations. Holding a live demo is the #1 suggestion, I would say, for getting media attention and inviting local TV news press there. But sometimes that just can take a lot of coordination internally, and I think when you're able to do that, I really advocate for doing a live demo. But that's something that, if you don't quite have the resources, can be a little difficult, or if you're not accustomed to really holding press avails, that may be something a little bit outside of your comfort zone. But again, that's something that I've worked with governments across the country to help do, even if it's not something that they're accustomed to.
Great. We had a question come in. They're asking, for resource-constrained budgets, as far as social media goes, where do you recommend focusing your efforts?
For social media, where do I mean, Twitter and LinkedIn, I would say, are probably the top 2 mediums. Twitter in particular, and just because, data is a digital industry, and so there are a lot of people and a really strong data community online, and so using the hashtag open data can help a lot, hashtag financial transparency, but really having a steady drumbeat on Twitter, in addition to thinking of, maybe there's a list of 20 to 30 people that you've worked with, community groups, advocates, internal, external influencers and stakeholders, and just sending the news out to them and asking them to tweet or post on LinkedIn as well. For limited resources, can be a really good way, and to amplify your message.
Great. So we'll move on to the next slide here. So what if you happen to be with an organization that has some more time and resources? What are some larger ideas?
So, again, not many people have a ton of resources, but, there are still some things that if you want to make a really big bang on your presentation, it doesn't take a ton of effort, but it does take some commitment, and oftentimes does take the commitment of your executive's office and sort of the press shop. So those can be some constraints, but I would say, making a press release that you put out nationally across the wire, that will cost some money, but it's something that can help that news get picked up nationally. In addition, when I mentioned a live media event with executive sponsorship and community leaders, with a mayor, governor, city manager, controller, whoever sort of the executive is, to really show support, as well as, if the mayor is holding a press conference, it's going to get a lot more attention than, say, an agency head or somebody else. So, a video on how to use with website animation and B-roll, that's something that, if you have an in-house videographer, or if you have some media contractors that you can leverage, a 2 to 3 minute video. This is something Topeka, Kansas did that for their budget that was really effective, with some B-roll of the city, showing how you use the application. Those get a lot of attention. They're also really great to post on your websites and, again, to use for social media. if you have a blog, either through your city or your specific agency, that's again something I would do to help you tell your story, as well as include screen grabs and do more of a internal staffer and or citizen, everyday citizen, rather than a press release that's really more geared to reporters. A blog can a lot of times get picked up more on social media, I would say. In addition, make a series of infographics to promote. The city of LA released some data on diversity in the workplace and did a very robust infographic around that. And so that's something, if you have a graphic designer, if you have a in-house media expert, again, using those sort of data points and putting it together in an infographic is something that helps a lot for proliferation through social media. In addition, another thing that a lot of governments do is they hold hackathons. So doing hackathons may be related. You could do a health hackathon, a transportation hackathon, things of that nature, really draw attention to the data. In addition, what I've recently seen is a lot of governments holding data workshops where they actually invite community members in and show them how to use the platform, in addition to give them a small sort of exercise. And that a lot of times, hackathons can be huge lifts in terms of organizing, and have come under criticism lately a little bit as well for their actual effectiveness. So data workshops are something else that I've sort of seen be effective to really help engage the community. Another is to write an op-ed to be featured in either a local publication, or we have a lot of close connections with national GovTech industry pubs, and those are something we really like to work with our customers on, because this really is a peer-to-peer industry, and I would say the journalists and publications in this area really like to hear the story of what people have done, of their struggles, of how they get internal stakeholders on board. And it's not an easy thing to do, and I think that there's a lot of recognition for that, and the more that people really talk about their journey, the more that we will encourage more and more governments to really embark on this open data journey. So, and lastly, there are a lot of interesting events. I sort of mentioned data workshops, but some of the other leading data-driven governments have come up with some fun ideas, such as Kansas City held an Art of Data exhibit where they had different local artists come in and create works of art that were based on data. And if you go to the Socrata website or go to opendata.tv, you can see a video of that. So that's, there are other fun, creative ideas. And again, that's something that I work with our customers on to think about and help execute.
Yeah, I know in particular the Kansas City Art of Data presentation, it was a lot of work for them to put together, but I think they've really seen a lot of reward in the media from that.
Exactly. I mean, I continue to see people comment on how awesome that they think it was. Initially Kansas City got a lot of great local media, some national tech media, but we posted a video about a month or so after it happened, and continue to see people's interest in that story, and particularly in the community. When I mention what Kansas City has done, people really think it's creative, inventive, and just a really wonderful new way to engage citizens in data and really break it down in a way that, again, there's sort of this mentality for a lot of people that you have to be an engineer or a developer or a coder to really engage with data. And I think by having artists come in and do it, or we've also seen a lot of work with youth tech groups, which is really interesting. You're really showing the potential for the democratization of data, and really for every person to be able to use platforms such as Socrata's.
Fantastic. Just a reminder to send in your questions. We are coming to the Q&A section of this presentation shortly, so get those in while you can through the GoToWebinar interface. But moving on to our next slide here, what are some tips for getting your launch announcement noticed on social media? And I know social media can be kind of tricky if you don't really understand it.
Yeah, I mean, it can be a little overwhelming, and again, but I have great customer best practices and use cases that I often share with our customers on things that they've done. You know, I think that pre-drafting a series of tweets is really important, and you know, as I mentioned before, coming up with a hashtag, including screen grabs and data points, and sending them out to stakeholders in the community and other influencers. Again, you know, if you don't really have a budget, if you aren't, you know, going to spend money on ads, which is highly unlikely in for most governments, I would say that, you know, really reaching out to your network of influencers, people that you know have a lot of Twitter followers, or, you know, have a lot of people who follow them on LinkedIn. So really targeting those people, you know, in the governor's office, sometimes I would reach out to someone with 1 million followers, and just, you know, that's a little bit of a specific use case, but you would just really see with 1 or 2 tweets how much that news can really be amplified. And so I would just say, you know, if you know someone with 10,000 followers, it's always worth it to send them a note to ask them to amplify that news, and really preparing that ahead of time and having a list of tweets that you can send out to people. So, you know, you're all really creating this echo chamber together around that launch, and maximizing the reach of that news within a 1 to 2 day period is really helpful.
Yeah, that's actually a question that we got in as far as timing for in particular Twitter. About how far in advance do you think people should start working on their Twitter campaigns?
It really depends, because a lot of times messaging and press releases aren't finalized until the very last minute. In an ideal world, you'd have your press release, I think, finalized about a week before the launch would be ideal. Again, I know how rare that is to actually happen. But so you'd have that done, and then, you know, having tweets crafted about 2 to 3 days beforehand, and sending out that note 1 to 2 days beforehand to people and say, this is embargoed, but we'd like you to share this. In addition, sending them an embargoed release, or that information may allow them to craft a blog post ahead of time as well. So that's what I would really shoot for.
What about after the launch? Like, how long should you really do that promotional push after?
I think that, you know, again, if you identify 3 data sets that you have screen grabs of, or maps, and these data points, I think that you can continue to just amplify that news with after the first couple days, where, you know, the first day you may have 5 to 7 tweets on it. The second day, then you may have 3 to 5, and then I think having 1 or 2 a day for the next week or two, it can be really helpful. And in addition, you know, continuously as you update more data or come up with new things, it's just it never hurts to continually point people back to the site and continue to amplify.
Great. So moving on here, what are some best practices for holding a live launch event?
So I've talked a little bit about this, but live launch events really help with your executive sponsorship. Again, you know, if it's a mayor, governor, city manager, they're going to attract a lot more attention. In addition, these all in all are mostly really, really positive stories. We very, very rarely see sites knocked by the media. If anything, it's you know, a caveat. Everyone congratulates the launch, but they may say, well, maybe we'd like to see more data in the future. But again, that's why it's really important to tell the story of a journey. Along those lines, most executives, I would say, should and would want to be involved in a launch announcement like this. It's a very positive news announcement, and I think by, if you don't have close connections with that executive team, really trying to communicate to them how positive this news is and really trying to get their involvement is really good to, even ahead of time, as you start building your site, start nurturing that relationship. So when you get to launch time, they're really on board with being part of the event. In addition, a project head, whether it's the CTO, whether it's the CIO, whether it's an IT director, or a performance project manager, although we see a range of individuals who really lead these projects, and having that person whose baby this really is get up and talk about it is really really awesome. And in addition, community leaders, or as I sort of mentioned, good government groups, having that external validator there is really important to talk about all the great work that you're doing, and it's not coming from the mayor or other government staffers. It's coming from an outside organization or group or open data advocate who is really cheerleading your efforts. In addition, having a live demo of the tool is I think that's invaluable. We've seen, for instance, Cincinnati gave a live event and did a live demo and had 3 local news stations pick it up, and there were local, TV news segments. And so I think when you're, really providing people with that visual, with that video, it's more likely that it'll get on the nightly news. And again, with the demo, it can be just 3 talking points, 3 data sets that you're exploring to answer a question or two. It's, how do I find out, what farmers markets are in my neighborhood, which, a lot of open data portals have, things of that nature, just clicking on the map, showing how to do that, and just have, whether it might be something about education, it might be something about transportation, particularly identifying maybe 3 questions that are related to subjects or topics that the executive is really interested in are important. And finally, some governments have the resources to live stream events, and that is best practices for sure, but I know many governments don't have that capability, so I would absolutely say live tweeting, which is also something that you can prepare ahead of time if you've drafted out talking points or know what the event is going to look like. You can just queue up those tweets ahead of time, and as it goes through the presentation, you can tweet them.
Yeah, I know we run into this at Socrata a lot, where a lot of these open data applications are so interesting and so useful and so hard to explain through words. So having that live presentation can really, like the live example, can really make a difference in people understanding exactly what they're dealing with.
Absolutely. It's really amazing how overwhelming a catalog or even the website can seem to, unfairly so I would say, because but a lot of times with reporters, they just sort of figure, I'm not a data scientist, so I can't figure this out. But then just seeing in front of them, 2 clicks and you can create a map, 2 clicks you can find out this question. All of a sudden, they very quickly know how to use the tool and know that it's really easy to use and see the value for citizens of the tool.
Great. So what support does Socrata provide to customers to help promote their launch?
Again, this will really vary based on our customers' resources, also their messaging goals. What I often tell customers is I'm really here to help you promote your message, whether, again, it's attached to an executive policy discussion on things like education, health, And so that's really involved in our overall media strategy support, which I'll get on the phone with communications directors and or press secretaries and really talk through these best practices that I've enumerated and really what makes sense for them. In addition, I'll show examples of best practices and what other customers have done. We, through our Socrata network of influencers, our connections with GovTech industry publications, we will amplify the news, possibly write a blog or a press release, depending on what makes sense for the situation. In addition, we will do ample social media support, and in addition, send that information out to our influencers to help create that, again, that echo chamber around your launch. And as we do have Socrata-led webinars, which, if you are interested in, Jessica is our webinar rock star, and so she host webinars with our customers from on a variety of topics. Again, this really is a peer-to-peer industry, and people really love hearing about your open data journey, and that's something that, again, it's a lot of times what you want to talk about and a message that you think is beneficial for you to get out. We are happy to work with you on that. And in addition, we can give guidance on post-launch activities and next steps, whether it's, deciding at some point you want to do a big push around a certain vertical of data, or, down the line, you're going to release, say, a sustainability portal or do different things. We can talk through what a longer-term media plan would look like.
Great. So what are the next steps to keep interest going after the launch promotion is over?
Absolutely. So again, as I sort of mentioned, planning ongoing data releases around verticals that you can promote, like transportation, education, health. That really engages a specific industry of people, and you can do a more targeted event or hackathon, demo, data workshop, do events around that in addition to just putting out a press release. Engaging the community with data workshops, hackathons, again, doing outreach to youth tech groups. And that's something we've seen a lot, particularly in urban environments, can be really effective. App contests, that's definitely something if you have a much bigger budget. Another thing you can consider is working with sponsors, getting private sponsorship for your app contests. And another possibility is engaging local academic institutions. A lot of institutions now are creating urban data programs or have tech programs or things that really dovetail well with open data, and sort of creating those partnerships and engaging academia is really beneficial. In addition, because there are so, everything from urban planners to social workers to, there's a variety of researchers and academics who are working on very interesting and complicated policy issues, and having better data and having tools for them to be able to explore the data is really important. And we've seen those government collaborations, whether it's with academia or even with some private sponsorship, be really successful. And again, it's about the democratization of data and having people just have access to data as a resource to help solve those very complicated problems.
Great. So I think we're at the question period now. We have a couple of questions here. So tell us, what are some tips for getting internal support for your promotional efforts?
Internal support. Again, talking about how open data is a really strong positive story is really helpful, and as well as, again, if there's a policy area or a specific cause that an executive is interested in, really showing how that can help an executive tell the story of that city, county, state, using data, using the tool, using visualizations. And so, you know, really showing how open data touches every policy issue and how you can really leverage that to tell your story is positive. I mean, definitely talking outside of your department and talking with others and engaging them, whether it's in a press group, whether it's the chief of staff, talking and communicating what you're doing, as well as you know, showing really positive press examples from other cities, states, counties can be a good way to say, like, look at all of this great press that they got. If we really, you know, commit to doing an event, to doing a press release around this launch, we have the potential to also get really great recognition for being a data-driven government.
Wonderful. I think that's actually all we have time for today. So Lisa, thank you so much for coming and telling us all your secrets.
Well, thank you very much, Jessica, for having me. Thank you, everyone who joined us. And I do want to close out with just saying, for all of our customers that we do have visiting us on the webinar today, be sure to check out our Customer Summit, which is October 26th and 27th in Washington, D.C. We will have some of the leading data-driven individuals in the country, in the world, actually, giving amazing presentations. There will be breakout sessions, ability to talk to others, and I would say, you know, just from last year, the amount of relationships forged during and you know, just shared stories is really invaluable in terms of, again, this is a peer-to-peer industry, and people are more than willing to help each other out. And yeah.
And on top of that, it sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, I think it'll be awesome. So.
Great. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for attending. And with that, I'm going to close out the webinar.